This is WPSL Port Saint Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It is 10:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. And you're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast on this beautiful, beautiful Friday. I love Fridays. They seem to be gorgeous as a rule.
Oh, it is. It is gorgeous out there.
It is. It's absolutely wonderful.
So, we have to change your title?
No.
It's no longer Dr. Rabbi.
Oh.
It's Dr. Pinned Rabbi. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful award.
Thank you. I was very honored. I'm thrilled. IRC actually put me through that training.
Okay.
That's part. They have a commitment to both full-time and adjunct faculty to help us be the best teachers that we can be. You know, it's interesting. Adjuncts in particular typically come in off of industry and bring in the real world experience and add it to the subject. But they're not always the best teachers because they're doers rather than teachers. And it's a different skill set. And so this is in part aimed at helping those who need some teaching skills to gain them, and to those who have some teaching skills to sharpen them and add a few more tools to the box.
I think it's wonderful. Yeah, so, this is a wonderful plaque that you got.
Yeah. It was very sweet. I actually also got a little tiny AQ pin, or I should say a magnet that I can wear. I didn't choose to wear it today.
Oh, but hey, congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Well, and that's very interesting. You say that. The second career people, there are a lot of superstar athletes that become coaches, and they aren't good coaches because everything came so easy to them.
Yeah.
And they could not explain to their pupils.
And today's students face a very different world than they did 15 or 20 years ago. Academe was not fast to take on technology, in part because of how expensive it is. But today, if a student doesn't have at least a functional iPad or a laptop, they're struggling because so much of what is done is on the computer. You can't walk into a college class today and expect to succeed without having technology at your fingertips.
And I know Dr. Moore has talked about, it's education is going to be going 1,000 miles an hour for several decades to come.
Oh, yeah. And the other side of that, though, because so much of what we do is video in today's world, there is not the skill set that there used to be for speed reading.
Oh.
Not even reading, but in reading quickly.
Well.
And in reading smart. And I have to tell you, every single semester, some number of students come at me and say, what are the instructions for? And my first response is, have you read, this one I love, have you read the instructions on the Dropbox? The Dropbox is where on the computer in the classroom shell, the student turns in their assignment.
Yes. Yep.
And the student comes back to me. Now this is March, late March. This was just this past week. Class started in January, and this is
I was going to say,
March.
when's the paper due?
The paper, that particular paper is due in either Sunday or in a week. I'm not sure which. Depends on which class it is, 'cause I stagger them by a week.
See,
so
that would
I
be
have time
me.
to grade
Guilty
them.
as charged. I wait till the 23rd hour.
And that shows because you don't do the quality of work
That's
that you
true.
would do
That's true.
otherwise. And I'm sitting here looking at my thermos. Hold on a second. That was truly stage right. And I'll put it on stage left now, thank you. But the student says to me, well, I'm not familiar with that software. I'll have to look it up.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And I'm like, the Dropbox is where you turn your assignments in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. The more and more time I spend with the women's basketball teams, the coach occasionally brings her now 4-year-old daughter. And, those little ones are buried in their tablets from the time they're 1 year old.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
We have a phenomena going on right now called screen kids.
Oh.
Which are kids that have too much screen time. Here's the temptation with the screen. You get one screen and you've got a million free apps that you can put on it and keep the kid occupied.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking necessarily at educational pieces. They're looking at keeping the kid occupied, something to play with, not looking at an educational content. That's one part. The other thing about the tablet, of course, is that it comes with you on the bus, on the plane, in the restaurant, etc. And when that happens, the kid is buried on the screen. They're not interacting. They're not learning social cues. They're not learning how to read each other. They're learning how to read emojis, but not people.
Oh, gosh.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the really bad part about that, under the age of 6, is that the amount of learning that goes on in a child is phenomenal. The first 6 years of life are essential to giving yourself that jump start on being able to do the things that you want and can do in life. Can you do things later? Yes, but it is so much harder. It's harder to learn things when the brain is not evolutionarily designed to pick that up.
Well, it's like our grandkids were maybe 2.5 years old when they started reading.
And kids today are not reading, they're videoing.
Yeah.
And they see it in snips, and we thought it was bad with Popeye and Biff Bop and Wham, but it's worse now. Or we had TV kids that were popped down in front of the TV.
Oh, yeah.
And all of these are mechanisms to make the child easier to supervise.
It's a babysitter.
Yeah. But there are some really basic things about it. Kids' toys today are expensive. They're horribly expensive.
Yeah, we've been looking, preparing for later this year, and for the Christmas kids, and it's like, oh my goodness,
toys are expensive.
What was because our limit's usually about $15 a toy, and it's like
you're not going to get much this year.
No, our games have gone up to the 20s,
everything has gone up.
Well, it's all petroleum.
Yeah.
That's why. Yeah.
Well, everything. It's all related. Rent, taxes, interest. It all fuels the problem. It's a realization that the average rent requires an income higher than most people have, at least in Port Saint Lucie.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And that's probably the biggest eroder of income that I know of right now is the increase in rents. And it'll eventually stabilize itself when all of this massive building is done and there's too many houses. But at the moment, and it's slowly adjusting because we're no longer doing the lotteries, I don't think, to get a home. They're now doing promotions to sell. So it's starting to shift into the healthier. It's not healthy to have that much demand. It just isn't. When there's too much of either direction, it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Buddha was right. The middle road is the path.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you, Jerry Brown.
There's
Oh.
a but let's get back to the screen kids for a second. It's very, very tempting for parents to use the screen because of all the things that it offers. And you don't have to worry about picking up the toys. You don't have to worry about losing the puzzle pieces, breaking the little lever, the switch, the this, the that. You don't need to worry about battery. Well, you might have to worry about batteries. You have to worry about charging it anyway.
Well, and that's the other thing. You talk about the toys. Now, there's one toy that we've gotten for years that is now using 6 batteries.
Yeah.
And another toy that we have purchased in the past that is Wi-Fi only. Well, we don't know if
If they have Wi-Fi.
our kids even have Wi-Fi.
Yeah. The world is changing. But again, back to it. A really good toy for kids are things like blocks, Legos, American Brick, any of those.
Our grandbaby.
And not Legos for friends for ladies, please.
No, you're kidding.
Real Legos.
You're kidding me.
What?
There's a
Legos has marketed a young girls, and it is.
well.
And I love the company Legos because in so many ways they do so many things right. They do not do gender right.
Wow.
They do not do gender
our
right.
granddaughter used to play with
I
her brother's
Yeah.
Legos. I mean, always. And what's really interesting, you talk about the Legos, and I think about our grandson, who.
Well, the fact that it's his Legos and not hers is scary.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're Legos, both of them. But it's interesting now that since he's graduating from Eastern Washington with a degree in engineering, that it all started with Legos.
It does. And when we do something like the Legos for Friends, Legos Friends, the girly marketed piece, then the girls don't learn to build. They drive around in this little town that they put together very simply, and they get their hair done. They go to the pet shop.
No, come
Oh,
on.
I'm serious. They go to it's this weirdo town, and they don't interconnect, so you can't use them together with the regular Legos.
Oh, God.
And, yeah, the characters are different size than the little characters in the Lego City, Legoland. And it is a problem for Legos, in my opinion, as a psychologist and as an educator. It's not teaching the right lessons. We're not teaching women to be spatially aware. And I think that one of the reasons that I have the math skills and the engineering in my background is because I didn't play with Legos. I played with American Brick.
There you go.
Same
Well,
difference, folks.
The
I built-
predecessor, if you
Yeah,
will.
I built all kinds of things with my American. And I don't even know if they were new or passed down from a sibling. I don't know. I don't care. They were fun. I did that, and I did with the circles and the sticks and the
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
whatever that
Can't
building.
think of that. Yeah.
That game was. Come on, folks.
like
Somebody
an-
give me a
like
call.
an erector set or
772-340-1590. What was that game called that had the little circles
Yeah.
with the holes in it, and you built all kinds of things with sticks and sprockets and,
Yeah. So
and
when,
joints.
when did you know that you might want to be an engineer?
I think I always tinkered with stuff. And now maybe this is my older brother, my youngest older brother, the youngest of the brothers.
Huh?
Yeah. There were 3 brothers real close in age, and then there's me, like a generation later. And but the one that I knew best used to like to take things apart. And so I think when I came along, my mother didn't think anything of my wanting to take stuff apart and see how it worked. So I got to take lots of stuff together and try to put it back together and have fun with it. They had no problem with that erector set. That's what it. Yeah.
There you go.
And there was another name though for the one but yeah. I also did pickup sticks and learned about that, and I did many different toys, and many of them involved eye-hand coordination because that's what the screen kids don't get. They don't know how to put one block on top of the other and build 3 or 4 blocks up. And we don't think of that as a skill because we think that all kids have it, but they develop it by playing with the blocks. I had blocks. I had that wonderful set of blocks that has the circle and they're different colors. They've been around since dirt, the builder blocks, and they're fun. And I used to build it and throw balls at it like every other kid that I knew.
Oh, those are $20 now.
Wow.
The block, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were pricing those too.
Yeah, and I think those are really good toys. And yes, parents, you're going to step on them. And yes, they're not going to put them away properly. Work with them, teach them, show them, model the behavior of putting stuff away so the kid learns it. Because we learn more by imitation than we do any other way.
Oh, well, see, if you had an Italian mother like I did, you would put stuff away.
It all depends.
It's mandatory.
It all depends. Yeah, we are the product of our parents and grandparents and any other adults that are frequently in the environment. But it's so important for kids to play with each other, and that's the danger with homeschooling. They don't get enough social interaction with others, and they can become fearful of crowds. There's so much that goes on in childhood that we tend to take for granted, but it's not automatic. It's only automatic because we and the culture evolved together so that it tended to happen. But when we make rapid changes like the tablets, then it takes a while. And it's going to take parents saying things like, no phones, no tablets at dinner. Put it down for an hour before you go to bed. And get yourself ready to lay down and go to sleep. Don't have your mind cranking, because the games on the tablets today do weird things in the reward center of our brains. And I mean, I can demo it to you on the phone and tablet that I have here. They throw stuff at you, they sparkle, they jingle, they do all kinds of things. And that's meant to trigger the reward part of your brain so that you feel rewarded playing the game.
It's interesting. You talk about the phones and putting them away for dinner. The head coach at Florida Atlantic, when the team was flying to Houston, he said, okay, guys, the flight is 2 hours. Play with your phones because we're collecting them once we land in Houston, and you will not see them again until we're flying home.
Wow. Power to the coach.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Power to the coach.
It's a business trip.
Yeah.
You know, and they got to take care of business. But I think, okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it does. There's so much involved, and it's so easy to lock in on the screen. We see screen addiction. It's real. There, and I try to tell students, I can tell when you're on your phone because most people don't smile at their crotch.
Yes.
You have to realize from the teacher's standpoint, we can see much more than you think. You might be hiding the phone under the desk. But if you're looking down, most people are not that fixated on their crotch.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you can't pretend to be looking up because I don't see your eyeballs looking at me. We're very good at seeing that at a distance. We know when somebody's looking at you. You can feel it. And when the person's not there, there actually is something in our brain called mirror receptors, which are There's a mechanism in our body that is designed to take in all of the information that you're giving off, like that look that you just gave me.
Okay.
Okay. and interpret it and reflect back my reaction to your reaction. And
Wow.
it builds a bond, if you will, a social bond between people. It's why crowdthink happens, because there actually is attunement within the brains of the people involved. They start doing things more uniform. They start getting attuned to each other, just as if you listen to people starting to sing a song, they're on 15 million keys. And by the time the song ends, they're on, the ones who can are on the same key, and the rest of us are as close as we can get. But you can hear it tuning in if you pay attention from the beginning of something like a national anthem or something, where everybody's singing, and particularly if there isn't music accompaniment, then people start wherever they start, and they listen while they sing, and they bring their tone in attunement with the others.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that goes on. In fact, being a good speaker, as you know, involves being able to listen and read those skills. We actually teach people to do that. But we do some of it automatically. We're simply sharpening the skills when we teach people to be public speakers. So we have meandered, and I was going to talk about Passover, and Passover is Wednesday night.
Yep. And how do I greet you on Passover?
Okay, so you can say to me, have a sweet Passover, have a happy Passover, or have a kosher Passover. Those are the appropriate terms. And as I point out to people all the time, Passover is a huge, huge celebration. It's a celebration of abundance. It's the springtime. It's rebirth. Part of what we eat are spring vegetables. Thank you, Zoroastrians, for the spring festival that they had that was incorporated into the current Seder. And thank you to the Romans for their symposium, and no thank you for everything else. But
yes,
sorry about that. So Passover has three themes in it, two of which are agricultural, and one of which is spiritual / other. The two agricultural pieces, one is the matzah, the flatbread, if you will. I think in the old days it was much more like a lavosh, a flatbread, the crispy flatbreads that you get. I think because those don't rise either. They're mixed quickly and baked, and come from the same area, so probably the technology is pretty similar. They used to mix it, throw it in the oven, and it would be unleavened bread because it would bake quickly.
So almost like a burrito skin, if you will.
Yeah. And so that's Chag HaMatzah, the festival of matzah. And that matzah is made from the newly harvested wheat. You would have harvested the winter grain and thrown out the old summer grain that was in the storehouses because it gets toxic. If grain is stored in the ground and gets wet, it can grow one of the most toxic bacteria on the planet.
Whoa.
That kills pretty quickly. And so the idea is to clean all of that out, clean everything. Spring cleaning is the festival of matzah. It's the festival of matzah. So spring cleaning, get rid of all of the old wheat so that bacteria can't contaminate the fresh wheat. And then you bake bread because it's a festival meal, and you don't take the time to let it rise because you've got 40 to 50 people who are waiting for you for dinner. So you make it quickly. Unleavened bread, the festival of unleavened bread, because it's the new wheat.
We'll come back to that. Would be an open fire, I presume, right?
Well, they had ovens.
Did they have brick ovens?
But they just didn't have knobs on them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they had earthen ovens, and there's actually a couple of interesting discussions about different kinds of oven, because of course food spatters when it's baked, and the question is what's going to fall on the food as a result of that, how do you clean, how do you not clean the oven? Interesting pieces. And so we start to see some division of different ovens used for different functions. And
Yeah, I
there's
was going to
discussions
say,
of
how do
that.
you do that in a brick?
Well,
Brick oven, yeah.
so you use it for bread. You have a bread oven, and then you have
Okay.
different things. And meat, it tends to be cooked on an open fire or roasted. And what's interesting about the second element of Passover, which is the Pesach, the Paschal lamb, it's the yearling male ram, and it is to be roasted. So very specific about how it's to be prepared, not boiled, but roasted. And
That would be over an open fire?
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And that would be my guess, so that it doesn't mess up something, because they're fatty, because they're lamb.
Sure.
And lamb fat's very not friendly to being cleaned, as anybody who's ever cleaned a plate that lamb's been eaten on can tell you. It's one of the stickiest fats. It just is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Think
You
about
say
when
that.
you eat it, because you want to eat lamb very hot so that the fat isn't
Wow.
yucky in your mouth. That's why lamb is always served on a hot plate in a restaurant.
No leftovers.
Well, and that's the other requirement, actually. You're not allowed to leave over any of the lamb.
Okay.
So there's
But again, that's a health issue.
it has a secondary health issue. And I don't think the health is the primary, but I think it definitely comes along with it. So why do we have the lambing festival? Why is that this time of year? Well, the young girl sheep are about to go into rut. So let's imagine that you've had your flock has been good to you, and you get 100 little girl sheep that your flock has increased by. Well, how many little boy sheep did you get alongside that 100 girls? What do you think?
I would guess 100.
Yeah, pretty much so. It's about 50-50 in most mammal litters. So you probably have 50 little boys, all about a year old, all starting to feel like teenagers. How many male sheep does it take to make your 100 little girl sheep have babies?
I would say the same 100.
No, they're not monogamous.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Oops.
Oh. Okay. Lambs in the Playboy Mansion. Let's see.
Well,
10. Oh.
and that's probably how many you really need out of that 100. You know, you'd only need one if he's good, two if you want to give him a break, but probably you're going to keep enough to keep the gene pool a little bit diversified, just in case something happens to one. And 10 is probably as many as you can manage, because what happens when the females go into rut, that's heat. When they go into heat, what do the boys do? Well, when I used to raise dogs, I described that as their brains falling down between their legs. Because there is only one thing on their minds, and that is, who can they insert their gifts to? And they're going to be looking, and they're going to and how do they view their brother? Not friendly. Right. There
Lots of fights.
Lots of fights. Lots of vicious fights. It's most of the time, rams don't fight horribly. They're pretty docile animals. But when the females are in rut, that's a really primal earth need to make babies.
Oh, you've some of those videos.
Of
Colorado.
of the males
bighorn
bucking.
rams?
Yeah.
Oh.
And you can hear that ram noise far away.
Yeah.
Right. And so you want to get rid of that 90 that you don't need. Well, when you've got a 90, and you probably ate some of them, the ones that you knew you weren't going to use in your breeding program along the way, but you still have a good chunk. Most of the animals that are eaten are males, because the females are going to make babies.
Right.
And
Makes
you only
sense.
need a handful of males to keep that process going. So you've got a lot of excess males around. So it's coming to the season. They're going to be going in heat. April's a really heavy heat season. And they're going to slaughter the male the yearling males. That's the Pesach, the excess males. It's not an atonement. It's getting rid of the extra males.
So where does the blood go?
Into the ground.
Oh, straight into the ground.
That's the kosher rule is you slit the throat as painlessly on the animal as you can, and the blood is drained immediately into the ground.
Okay.
In the temple, it was gathered in buckets to get it out of the temple and into the ground. On a few rare occasions, it was dashed to show people that the animals had bled out. But no, there's no. Jews go yuck to blood. That's why Jewish food is generally overcooked. It's to get rid of any sign of blood.
So you're not going to eat medium rare prime rib?
Most Jews won't.
Okay.
Let me rephrase it. Most Jews who follow dietary rules won't.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to see the blood.
Yeah.
And I confess, I do eat rare meat. I like rare meat, but I can remember my father being very turned off at the sight of it because it just was appalling to have blood. So there's a big off-pushing on blood. It's just not. No blood sausage.
So how did you wind up eating
Rare meat
or medium rare meat?
Because I went away from Judaism for a while.
I see. I didn't know that.
I didn't become anything else, but I also it didn't matter for a while.
Kind of agnostic.
I was kind of in that in-between stage, and I just kind of went with the flow of what was around me. I had gone out into work. My life had changed. I was originally going to become a rabbi, and that didn't work. So I drifted.
Okay. Was this before you became an engineer? Or after?
Yeah, it was before I became an engineer. It's when I had to go into retail to earn a living because the economy had tanked. It was after my father had died. And it was just my mother and me. And she had not kept kosher in her youth because she was progressive in Vienna. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it didn't bother her that I had discarded it. It was also hard where we ended up living to keep a kosher home, and there was no longer the relationship between my mother and father because he had died. So we still had the dishes, but they stayed in She did get a separate set of dishes when we started not keeping a kosher home.
Did she really?
Yeah, she really did. She packed away the kosher dishes and just.
Oh, wow.
And just left them. So, it's just a kind of an interesting thing, and it didn't faze me one way or the other. We started by eating out, and then slowly started bringing things home. And at first that was on paper plates, and then she got tired of that and got a set of dishes to quote unquote have the leftovers on. It slid in. And I think that happens with a number of families, that a life change situation like that. But yeah, so the second element of Passover is the Chag HaPesach, the festival of that yearling ram. And of course, what do you do if you've got a ton of meat being slaughtered? You have a party. You have a festival.
Sure.
The third element is Zman Cherutzenu, the time of our freedom. And that's the story of having been slaves, having been oppressed. And when I say slaves, I'm not talking about the American model of slavery, where people are sold and horribly mistreated. I'm talking more the oppression and marginalization of, say, undocumented workers. That's a better way to look at what Egyptian slavery probably looked like. And it was an oppressed, abused population that wasn't well understood and was not well integrated.
Knowing what our farm workers went through in California and Arizona, that's a horrible existence.
It is, and that's why it says, don't ever do that to somebody else, because you were once, you know what that feels like, you know what that tastes like. Don't do it. That's why there is throughout Jewish tradition. Don't oppress others because you were once oppressed. You know what it's like to be on the bottom. Don't put anybody there. Not that it's adhered to. Don't get me wrong. I understand. People oppress people all the time. People marginalize people all the time. But the instruction to not do it's there. And so there's an element of Passover that is about freedom. And that's the reclining as you eat, recline to the left, because that's what rich, free people can do. And at the time, so before the temple is destroyed, and the temple is destroyed by the Romans in 67 to 70, they breach the wall in Jerusalem and destroy it and burn it down. And so you can no longer take your sheep to the temple and have them ritually slaughtered and then cart them home to roast. Can't do that. So Passover has to change. The traditional meal before the destruction of the temple, i.e. in the time of Jesus, would have been to have the meal of the flatbread that the farmers, the wheat growers, would bring in, on with the paschal lamb that the shepherds would have contributed to the festival, and eat it with some bitter herbs to remember how bad slavery was.
Oh, wow.
So it's a meal of those three parts eaten together.
Interesting, huh? So that would be kind of a pita type thing,
Yeah,
right?
probably a pita. Probably throw the lamb inside with the bitter herbs in a pita. Pita means bread, by the way, in Aramaic. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so when you go to the market to get some pita bread, you're getting bread.
Okay.
Yeah. Mare Dahai Pita, who created bread.
Wow. You're a wealth of knowledge, I
Well,
swear.
thank you. So anyway, so those are the three elements of Passover. And when the temple is destroyed, the rabbis consciously look around and say, what are we going to do? We need to come up with something that people can do in their home that remembers all of these elements of the Passover, but we can't include the lamb because we can't do that. Plus, Jews are also starting to get diversify and move and go throughout the Roman Empire, and they've always been meandering. They've been exiled to Baghdad, which is Babylon, and clearly had wandered here and there and gone all different places. And so the rabbis look around and they take from the Zoroastrians the Nowruz, the festival of spring. That works. It is spring. And they take the Roman Symposium, because that's the dominant culture in the area at the time, because Rome is occupying Judea, what was Judea. And what was it? In Israel, it's actually the northern kingdom never lost its independence, but it was so poor that it didn't really matter. And so they create the Seder, this idea of sitting down and talking about the story and asking questions. And so they come up with the Seder plate, which if you look at a Nowruz, a spring festival Zoroastrian plate, looks amazingly similar. It's a direct, probably purchased plates right off of the Silk Road, because they were ready-made and convenient and had compartments to lay things. And it's common for them to have different spring vegetables, and the karpas and the chazeret and all of this, and the bitter herbs even, are spring vegetables that grow.
Which would have been, hundreds of years earlier?
Which, the Nowruz?
No, the Zoroastrians.
Yeah, the Zoroastrians are pretty much very close. They certainly predate the temple destruction. It's a Zoroastrian king that returns the Jews had been carried off to Baghdad and allows them to return, of which 10 to 15% do. Most of them stay. Baghdad had one of the longest standing Jewish communities until Operation Magic Carpet.
I didn't know
brought
that.
them to Israel.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And if there's any still alive in Baghdad, I'd be surprised. There was under Hussein still a Jewish community, but not much. It was dwindling.
Wait a minute. He allowed that?
He allowed other religions. You paid a tax. You paid a tax. It's the...
Oh, brother.
Yeah. Because you weren't paying into the state coffers through the religion, so you had to...
Right.
You had to do it otherwise. Yeah, it's just... older economic social systems are interesting. And I'll leave it at that. We don't have enough hours in the show to talk about it today. So the Seder changes, and it takes on these two elements and the questioning. And Haggadah, which is the book that is the guide to the Seder, means the telling. It's the telling of the story. And here's a piece that I love to tell Jews. If you read the Haggadah from the first word to the last word, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah of telling your own story. You have to tell your own story of how you came out of the things that oppressed you, of the tight places in your life.
Oh, wow.
You have to
Okay.
share that and process it. That's part of the ritual. So that you realize you are in a better place than you used to be.
Just inside you, or is this...
No, you
verbal?
share it. You have to verbally share it.
Verbally. Okay.
So it goes around. That's one of the reasons why the Seder is supposed to take so long. You go around the table and you talk about it. So I always encourage people to do that during the meal part, because that's a natural time to talk. Talk to your neighbor. Tell your stories. You know, share and switch off so it's not just one-sided. But it's a kind of group processing. I'm not going to say group therapy because it's not therapy, but it's a group processing. And so that's the piece. If you go and look at a video of Passover songs, you're going to hear the themes of freedom for the most part. There'll be jokes about the matzah, of course, because matzah has become, in the effort to make it easy to transport, to manufacture and transport, matzah came from being this round or oblong chunk of bread to being box-sized, packaged in 10s and 12s in little bags and thrown into a shipping box.
I remember Seinfeld had a bit on that.
Oh, yeah, everybody does. And, you know, my reaction to myself was, okay, I've got to bring the box of matzah into work so that if I munch on a piece of matzah. Because a lot of the foods that are available are not allowed because they have leaven in them. And it's used a lot in puffing up things and what have you. So some of my favorite snacks of puffed things are just not going to be eaten for a week.
What about my kosher hot dogs?
They might be kosher for Passover. They might not. You need to check. It'll say, it'll have a P on it for Passover next to the kosher symbol.
Oh.
Yeah. And very often manufacturers, like matzah manufacturers, will say not for Passover use if the product is not. So how can matzah be not for Passover? The everything matzah matzah manufacturers want to sell matzah all year round. They don't want to just sell it for Passover.
Right, obviously.
So they make different kinds of matzah the rest of the year. They make egg matzah. They make everything matzah. And you'll see on the box, usually in the top right corner, in fairly easy to read print, not for Passover. Or it'll say kosher for Passover.
I'll have to look for that in Publix. Okay.
It's 3 or 4 of the boxes. If you go to the little 2-foot section that's got kosher food in it, that'll have matzahs that are not kosher for Passover. If the store doesn't know what they're doing, some of those might migrate over into the Passover display accidentally. It's one of the ongoing challenges of teaching supermarkets how to market for Passover. But you'll see that there's even potato chips. Lay's markets a special kosher for Passover, making sure that stray ingredients don't get into the package.
Oh.
Usually has a red peel off. It's crimped into the crimping of the bags. A little red streamer that says kosher for Passover.
Okay.
Geffen does a lot of products that are kosher for Passover. Different companies do. Lipton's does a kosher for Passover.
So now, Orthodox.
They'll use the packages marked kosher for Passover.
But, I mean, is their holiday the same as you've described?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That some Jews are not as rigorous in making sure that all the ingredients they use are kosher for Passover. There are standard jokes about having fried chicken. Yeah. Now you can make fried breadcrumbs, right? Breadcrumbs. But what I will tell you is very tasty, and I do it during Passover, which is that I will fry chicken with matzah meal, which is crumbled matzah made into a meal consistency. And that makes a really good fried chicken. But it's a little more work than going down to Publix and getting fried chicken. KFC, any of those things. Or buying you can even buy Empire frozen fried chicken, but not for Passover. Yeah, it was really funny when I was a student rabbi, and of course shrimp are not kosher, but I was a student rabbi in a congregation, and one of the congregants came up to me and said, "I'm having trouble finding the breaded shrimp for Passover." And I was like, I imagine you would, Two things wrong there. Nothing right.
How long have you been Jewish?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so obviously that's a Jew who did not observe the dietary laws and did not know them.
Well, but, going all the way back, I mean, you think, okay, some of this is a bit quirky, but
it makes sense.
Makes perfect
sense. It makes sense when you look at how people lived. The idea of kosher means ritually fit. And it's not that people didn't eat meat that wasn't kosher or fish that wasn't kosher if they lived on the sea. They did, I'm sure. They didn't serve them for community meals, because that's where they're going to get dangerous. You can't make shrimp jerky. You can't make lobster jerky. You can't make pork jerky. You can make beef jerky. You can make fried pork, the rinds, but you can't make jerky. You can't just lay it out and dry it.
I never thought about that.
It doesn't dry like, and the reason for that is because pigs are omnivores. Only the flesh of plant-eating mammals will jerky properly. So those are the ones that'll dry properly so that you can eat them later without refrigeration. They're also safer to cook for a crowd. You're not going to get trichinosis. You're not going to get some of the other... pork is notorious if you don't cook it well that it can make you sick. And the problem with community meals is that's when there's the highest likelihood that it might not be as cooked as it should be. Because the meal's got to happen when the meal's got to happen. And if you were a little slow getting it set up to cook, it might not get up to temperature.
Yeah.
And so for community safety, you're going to want to use the foods that are safer. And I'm sure that that's part of the root of it. So kosher means ritually fit, worthy of being served to a community at a community meal. And slowly but surely that came to be in your home because, of course, you entertained in your home. And so it just naturally spread. And, yeah.
So tell us about your community
Thank
Seder.
you. We are having a community Seder on Wednesday, and it will be in a private home. We'll give the address to everybody who registers for it. You can register at our website, www.eitzchayim.org. $36 for adults, and there's on the website it tells you about kids. There's a family cap for adults and kids, so we understand that there are budgetary concerns. It's probably as cheap a meal as you can go. I went on the web and I was seeing Seders starting at $50 to $75 right now. So $36 for a full ritual, and that's a full ritual meal. That includes the matzo ball soup, the egg that's kind of we'll talk about that at Seder. How does an egg get onto the Seder plate? There's a vegan option, there's brisket, there's chicken and salmon. So lots of different choices for the main course.
What would a vegan option be?
It's going to be an assortment of vegetables.
Okay.
So
yeah, a little something for everybody.
Something tasty for, yeah. So we do that. We make. So far, my vegan folks have not complained about what I offer, and it serves as a vegetable for everybody else. It will tell you it has squash in it. It has like not cauliflower. It'll have cauliflower in it.
I love
broccoli.
Love both of them.
Yeah,
Love all
it's
three.
a whole bunch of different vegetables, and I always serve nuts on the side so that I know that my vegans get a full protein.
Yeah.
Got to have the pieces so you can build it. So, yeah.
That's very
so those are the
interesting.
options. And please do join us. All you need to do is go up on the website and register, and we will give you a call with the address and the information of how to get to the house. It's not far from the temple. It's just about 3 minutes. But we wanted to move it into a nice, comfy home environment where we can sit on the couch after we eat and continue talking and.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That sounds great. Well, again, the website to
The
register?
website, www.eitzchaym.org. And now it's even phone-friendly, so you can do it on your phone. For many years, our website was not phone-friendly. We just upgraded.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technology being what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Please do consider joining us. First services, obviously, are tonight at 7:30, and we are going to be talking some more about Passover and its traditions and what you can and cannot do.
Awesome. That is awesome. Well,
Wishing everybody a sweet, kosher, and happy Passover. And to my Muslim friends, a Ramadan Mubarak.
oh, okay.
They're in the festival of Ramadan right now.
They have a spring festival as well.
Their festivals are not season tied because they don't have leap years, so every 33 years their calendars come around. My Zoroastrian friends, a happy Nowruz. And yeah, lots of different festivals around. And of course to Christians, I guess a peaceful, reflective Lent as you get closer to Easter.
All right. Have a good one. Have a good week.
Have a good week, everyone. See you in Passover next week.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world.